Hey everybody, my name is Laurie Meyer. I am an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. I have a website and a blog at stampedgreetings.com, and this is my first attempt at a video. I would really appreciate your feedback, especially if you have some constructive ideas on how I might improve, or if you saw some things you really liked. I'd really like to know. It would be super helpful. Today I'm going to show you how to make this diagonal fold and cut card. It is a really neat idea. It's one where you can get two cards out of one piece of 8.5 by 11, and you'll see it opens one flap and then the other. And I've used this as a Valentine card, but obviously you can use this design for pretty much anything you'd like. I do need to let you know that this was not my original idea. I cased the idea from a fabulous stamper, Frenchie. She is at frenchiestamps.com. And if you go to my blog, I'll have some more information, including a link on how to get over to hers, and you can take a look at the way that she made the card that inspired this card. But let me give you really quickly background on some of the products that I'm going to use to make this card. They're all pretty much from the new Painted with Love suite that is in the Occasions catalog. This is one of the the two-page layouts that really drew my attention when I looked at the Occasions catalog. Not that a lot of other pages didn't as well, but I wanted to get my hands on these products to make some fun Valentine cards. And one of the things that really drew me was this amazing designer specialty paper. It is absolutely phenomenal, and it is even more gorgeous in person than it is in the catalog, if you can believe that. And I'm not lying to you. You got to trust me, or maybe you should just get some in your hand so you can see it as well. Obviously I've cut these down. This is for another project for our stamp club, but you can see the beautiful colors, and there are many that have the gold included, and then on the opposite side there are just vibrant colors and designs that are so useful in many different projects. I really think you're going to like these colors, and you're going to notice that I use that designer series paper in a couple places on this card, on the front panel and also on the embellishment on the fold. Let me get you started on how this card was put together. And one of the things I want to mention is the backing is thick Whisper White. I've really enjoyed using thick Whisper White lately. It's just such a substantial cardstock. It's elegant. It takes to ink incredibly well. And what I've also been drawn to lately are the cardstock packs that Stampin' Up! Offers. It's a great way to get a collection of colors that you could use in many different projects. The one that I picked for this project is Petal Garden cardstock, and you can see it's got Calypso Coral, Thick Whisper White, and Rich Razzleberry. Well, guess what? Rich Razzleberry and Calypso Coral are two of the main colors that are featured in the Painted with Love designer series paper. That's why I chose this cardstock to work with. Plus, a benefit, I got that Thick Whisper White as well. To start the card, what you're going to need is a piece of 8.5 by 11 cardstock. This, as I'm sure many of you are familiar, is the standard size for a piece of cardstock. And what you're going to do is you're going to cut this to 8.5 by 8.5 square. Easiest way to do that, put this in your cutter and get it to 8.5 inch square by cutting on the 11 inch side down to 8.5. You will end up with a piece of cardstock that is 8.5 by 8.5. And what you're also then going to do in the next step, and turn that over to see the lines a little bit better, you're going to score at 4 1/4, turn 90 degrees, and score at 4 1/4. The reason you're doing this is that the card base, again this is going to be the base for two cards, is really 4 boxes, 4 squares that are 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. What we're now going to do to get those two pieces from the one cardstock, the two card bases, is we are going to cut from diagonal to diagonal. And this can be done in a standard cutting tool. And what I like about the one I have is I have a wire that shows me exactly where to cut. And I can line it up corner to corner so I can see that the wire is right on the corner on this side and then right on the corner on the other side. And I'm just going to go ahead and cut that in half. And when I do that, I will end up with two pieces of white cardstock, and each of them is going to look like this. So you're going to end up with two pieces of white, and you're going to be able to make two cards from each of those pieces. The next thing that we're going to need to do, and I'm going to bring back in a card example, is we're going to need to get the pieces that we're going to use to decorate the card. Since this card is 4 1/4 by 4 1/4, what I decided to do was make the decorative pieces a little bit smaller so that I would have a white border around the edges. I really like having a solid color border. It tends to frame the card and give it a little bit more of a finished look. What I did for the designer series paper is I used the Painted with Love designer series paper, and I cut a piece 4 by 4. This was originally a piece that was cut 4 by 4. And then just like the card base, I cut it from tip to tip, and now I have two pieces that are the same size triangles. For the other piece, that is the background of the card, I used the Rich Razzleberry cardstock that was in the card pack that I bought, cardstock pack. And again, I started off with a 4 by 4 square, and I cut that diagonal to diagonal, so I end up with two triangles that are the same size. And now it's probably starting to be a little bit more obvious why you end up with two cards. You need one piece of the designer specialty paper, one piece of the plain cardstock for each of the cards. Well, we have two pieces of each, so now we have enough materials to start working on both of our cards. One thing you probably have noticed, or let me point out if you haven't, take a look at the orientation of the specialty paper on the left card and the DSP on the right. They have a pattern. They have hearts, and I wanted to make sure that the hearts looked like they were right side up. I know that sounds crazy and obvious, but look at the way that this paper is cut. Well, I'm going to need to make sure that this triangle is on the bottom side of my card, and this triangle is on the top side so that the hearts are right side up. If you use a pattern that doesn't have an up or a down, for example, if you had used this designer series paper piece and cut the triangles, it doesn't matter. There's no side that's right side up or upside down. But in some cases, there are going to be ones that you're going to want to make sure that you have a right side up. You wouldn't want to put this on your card and have the hearts going upside down. So just be conscious of that when you're cutting out your designer series paper. The next thing to do is to actually put your paper onto the flaps. And when you do that, and I've already pre-glued these, I have predetermined that this piece in the bottom right is probably going to be the one that I'm going to have coming out first. And then I have my plain color on the top. And I've oriented the card so that the hearts are going the right way. When I glued my paper onto the card, what I wanted to do is I wanted to make sure that the corners and the sides were at about the same distance from the edge. On the actual diagonal, I didn't need to be as careful because what I'm going to end up doing is putting a piece of gold paper over the edge, and I'm not going to see the paper underneath. So the sides that I wanted to get as straight as I could are the ones that are really the straight edges of the card. And those are the ones that I concentrated on when I actually glued the designer series paper to this side, this flap, and when I glued the Rich Razzleberry cardstock to this flap. The diagonals are going to be covered. If you look at Frenchie's website, you're going to notice that she did some really fun and creative ways of designing and embellishing the diagonals. She used a lot of embossing and also a lot of die cutting. I chose to make these cards a little bit more elegantly simple, and I thought that one of the best ways to do that would be to use our gold foil. And I really think it adds some shimmer. It blends incredibly well with the designer series paper that we're going to use as the final embellishment on the top. And it also blends with the flap that I chose to pull the gold in. But obviously you can do what you'd like. Let me show you the trick of getting this gold on the side. And I'm going to actually walk through putting one of the sides on, and then you can do the other side because it's the exact same process. The gold foil, there are two pieces, one for each flap, is cut to 6 inches by 1/2 inch, and it's just pretty. It's very, very shiny, very heavy, so it gives some weight to your card. And what you're going to do is you are going to adhere the gold to the front of the card. I know that sounds obvious, but it's probably worth stating. And you can see if I turn this over, the gold is adhered to the front. I tend to use adhesive that allows me to move paper around until I get the paper where I want it to be. So I'm on the side of using very inexpensive glue. And I know many people like the tape runners, and I have nothing against that. I'm just a little bit more of the kind that likes to be able to continue to fidget with the placement of cardstock and paper until I get it right where I want it to be. What I've done here is I've put the card, the gold, as close, I need to move it just a little bit, as close to the corner, the inside corner as I can. And I'm going to show you why. When I fold this card over, see, this is why I use this kind of adhesive, so I have the ability to move it a little bit. When I fold the card, that gold paper is not getting in the way. And you can choose how much you want to overlap. I don't have a lot of an overlap here. I'd say it's maybe, I don't know, a little bit more than 1/4 inch. I'm going to give that a good push so that the glue will adhere nicely. And then I need to do some trimming, because if you'll notice on the cards that I've already shown you, the edges, the corners, look really clean. Well, the way to do that is once you have your glue adhered, you're going to ensure that the flap that you're working on is the one that's on the outside. So I'm going to put the other flap inside. I'm going to fold this over, and then I want to trim the sides. Well, to trim the sides, I'm actually going to go to the back, because on the back I can see better what it is that I'm doing. And I'm just going to go to the corner and cut it so that the edge is flush with the edge of the card. This is where I create confetti, and you're probably like me. When you have projects where you have a group of people over, I have a stamp club that comes over once a month, And we might use some dimensionals or glitter or pick your favorite embellishment. Well, I find it for days. In fact, my husband finds it for days. And he knows the lingo. He knows that dimensionals have the wax paper on the outside. So now, look and see how clean that looks. The edges are really cut nice and cleanly. Well, we need to do the same now for this side. I'm going to, again, put some adhesive on the area where I want to attach the gold paper. And then what I want to do is, as best as I can, I want to try and line up the imaginary straight line from this corner all the way to this corner, and try to get the gold straight. It's going to do two things that will visually be very nice when somebody receives the card and opens the card, and also the opening of the card, the way that the card functions, is going to be a little bit easier because things are going to be aligned as straight as they can. And you may not be able to get it perfect, that's okay, but you can see that I tried to get the line to be as straight as I could. Now I need to trim this side, and I want that to be on the outside, which means I'm going to put this flap in first, then I'm going to put that flap in. I'm going to go to the back, and I'm going to trim these off. And I want to show you, and I did this intentionally, I made this gold a little bit different height than the other card, because you can also have a really cool double gold. And I wanted to do that on this one to show you what that looked like. The other card that I showed you, I had really tried to get it pretty much in the middle, which meant that when I put the gold paper on, I tried to get as much hanging over the edge as was glued underneath. So again, a couple ways that you can make this card. But I think that looks really cool as well. It just gives it a nice double elegant look. To finish up this card, you have a lot of different ways to embellish. And one way that I found to use some of the products in the Painted with Love suite was to take the Lots of Love box framelit dies, which I love as well. I've got some other projects that are shown on the blog using these, and the designer series paper that I already showed you, and to use this heart die and to cut out some hearts from the designer series paper. What's nice about that is you have choices, because both sides of that paper are just completely gorgeous. So you'll be able to use whichever one you want. Also, I wanted to use some of the really, really pretty new tinsel trim that is in the catalog. And this is one of those things too that until you get this in your hands and see how pretty it is, you just don't appreciate the sparkle, the delicateness that you have going on with this particular trim. And what I did on these cards is I just tied a little bow and then used some of our fine tip glue and put that right in the middle. The hearts are put on with a couple of dimensionals, and it's also nice because when you look at the back of the heart, you see a different design. And these were two different DSP pieces, so you'll see that there were two different designs. Then you have an option. If you want to finish off the inside, you can. I'm kind of in the middle sometimes. I like to leave cards plain on the inside too, because I think it's nice for people to decide what they want to do with them. But on the card that I just showed you, I also use the Sure Do Love You stamp set that comes with or is part of the Painted with Love suite. This filigree outline of a heart is gorgeous. I stamped that in the rich razzleberry. And then I took an extra heart that I had cut using the framelits that I just showed you, and I adhered that right in the middle. And then I also used the Just For You stamp from this collection. I put that on some white cardstock and then cut it to just fit the outline of the heart. And it's just a really pretty finish. Well, I hope you've enjoyed learning how to make this card. I would really, really appreciate your feedback and look forward to seeing you soon. When you have time, please check out stampedgreetings.com. I hope you find it inspiring, and I hope you also find that I live up to my motto, which is 1 stamp set, 3 designs, and endless possibilities. Until next time, happy stamping.